The more affordable Tesla model is on the horizon. It's almost here. We've seen plenty of leaked spy shots, and some who predicted it would be a decontented Model Y, well, they get a gold star because that looks like it's what it's going to be. But are all these things that are removed actually important to buyers? Would they willingly pay more for them? They still can. And will they actually be able to save enough money to justify it? Maybe the whole thing's a flop. Hey, this is part two. Part one was on Randy Kirk's channel yesterday or this morning, I'm not sure, but before this one comes out, and we had a bit of a discussion. We're going to go even deeper. We're going to talk a little bit about the engineering, the costs, some of the finer details. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. So, Randy, you have seen what's going on. We went through some of the features. Let's just run down the list again. No glass roof. We're going to save a lot, don't you think? How much is a glass roof?
I have no idea what the savings would be, but it has to be a lot. I've had to replace my glass roof once on the Model Y because it cracked, and I don't know what it was. I don't know what it would have cost though because we had the insurance. So it cost me
Oh,
$250, but uh, I'm guessing that thing is worth a bunch.
on the Model Y, it's got to be even their cost 500, maybe even 1,000, but probably more like 500 at a minimum. That's a big chunk. That's 1% of the purchase price right there. We're saving some money. I mean, that's valuable, I suppose. The metal isn't free. Now you have to have a headliner, but those are still going to be some savings. The rear light bar. Now, you know that indirect light bar is something that had to be made special because no manufacturer in the world had a machine wide enough to manufacture that plastic in a single shot. Tesla purchased the machines and put them on all three continents where the cars are made so that a supplier would be able to provide those lights. We said we saving any money there?
Well, every little bit helps, but I'm going to guess that that's a fairly, the overall process there might be, hundreds of dollars to do that as opposed to just a regular light. So, yeah, I don't see, I mean, it's a very nice feature for a premium car, but for the person who's looking to save money, I don't think they're going to give one hoot whether it's on there or not.
My question to the audience is, on these features, would you care? Do you really need that indirect light? If you could save 500 bucks by not having it, would you? What about 200 bucks? Because I think for a lot of people, the answer is I love it. It's cool. For some people would say I'll absolutely pay for it. Some would say no, don't need it. So that's a big piece to remove. Front light bar would, I mean, I don't know what it costs. Less than the rear brake, the indirect brake, I would imagine. It's also a very large piece of plastic. It's kind of futuristic. I know some people don't care. Would how much savings are we talking? At least 100 or two, right?
Right, and again, part of the savings on the that rear light bar and the front light bar might be a nod to the premium buyer. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to completely copy the better car, or the person who's buying the better car who might, have their nose up in the air. And I'm sorry, but when you spend $45,000 for a car, you'd like it to look like it's a $45,000 car and not like somebody can get it for 25,000. I'm sorry, or even 30,000.
I agree with all of that. You need to have differentiation.
Right.
You need to have features that push the buyer to the fancier model. And we'll get into some of the bigger ones in a minute. But what about the cloth seats? Now, when you buy a car, you've bought a car or two in your life. How much cheaper is the cloth version versus the leather or vegan leather option?
Yeah, so I've had everything from Cadillacs to Jaguars and then down the other way to little Mazda station wagons and whatnot. If I had the choice, I always bought the cloth seat. Now I live in Southern California where it can be 100 degrees in the summer easily, sometimes 118 in Riverside. So there is a kind of a situation where the cloth can be more comfortable sometimes. when you first sit on it than a leather seat will be, and that is part of the reason why I have always preferred the cloth.
I've never seen the leather or vegan leather add on cost less than a couple thousand.
Yeah,
I know when I had my Chevy Venture and moved to a Pontiac Montana, which is the same car, but an Oldsmobile or a Pontiac instead of a Chevy, it's the same car. It had the fancier seats. I didn't even like them. I thought I'd rather have the cloth. It was more comfortable. But fine, whatever. And then no rear screen. What are we talking? 100 to $300 for that, probably.
yeah. I mean, you've got to wire it. You've got to. It's one more thing to for labor to install. The labor might be more than the actual cost of the screen. Um,
It could.
so, so yeah, I definitely.
And it's one more thing to warranty repair.
Yeah, absolutely, and probably on the high end of likelihood. Yeah. So no, I think it's a very clever addition. I think it's something that makes it's one of those deals where you can say, and by the way, it has a screen in the back, and people are like, oh, and then the usefulness of it might not be nearly what they were expecting it to be.
So we've talked about some pretty small items so far. $50 here, a couple $100 there. The glass, I suppose, is a good one. Changing that out will reduce your curb weight, potentially improve efficiency, or at least mean you can get the same performance from a smaller motor. Obviously, they're going to be doing a single motor instead of two, but they have a single motor Model Y. That's not surprising. Do you think that they would give you a smaller battery pack or a smaller motor for this car? Because I'm looking for real savings, and a battery pack is the drivetrain is the expensive part.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely thinking this is where the big savings has got to come. We know that a battery pack can be in the multiple thousands. I think on the order of $6,000, 7,000, maybe even more, depending on the size of the battery pack. So this is a place where you could easily be looking at reducing $1,000 or more in cost by just providing less range and/or less power, or different kind of power. You don't need the off the line power. That's not what people are paying for. So yeah, I think this is a major part of what they'll be looking to cut. And I think there's possibilities that they will. I mean, will they put in the batteries and just not turn them on? Well, I guess it will depend on whether it's less expensive to run two different battery packs or whether it's less expensive to leave batteries out. I don't know which one of those is true.
Software limiting is a thing. They could do that. And we talked about that on your show quite a bit. But if we're trying to save all the money we can, could they put in cheaper suspension? The Model Y Juniper has pretty fantastic suspension. Maybe they go back to something cheaper like what was on the older Model Y. This could weigh quite a bit less. If it's got a smaller motor and only one of them, if it's got a smaller battery pack, if it doesn't have that heavy glass overhead, and maybe 50 pounds of other stuff trimmed out, not a lot. No third row, of course. Maybe the suspension doesn't need to be as expensive. Trim another 500 to 1,000 there, do you think?
Yeah, no, I should know a lot about suspensions, being in the bicycle industry for the last 50 years, and of course the suspensions on mountain bikes are a big deal. But quite frankly, I don't know a lot about suspensions. I would think that for if it's possible, and I don't know whether it is, giving a softer suspension like they have now and giving up something on the performance side of the suspension would be the preferred way to go. So I know that on my Volvo, which was a sports sedan, a very like a 300 horsepower turbo twin turbo, it had a very stiff suspension because it was a sports car, and I'm sure it was an expensive suspension, but it wasn't a great comfort, on a freeway that hadn't been fixed in a while. So I think it would go if they can get the money out by making it a softer suspension, but not as sporty.
All of this only got the price down by 12 to 15%. Model Y is currently what, 45,000 before the IRA. This new vehicle will never have an IRA credit. You
No,
might be lucky and get some state or local incentives, but check with your local Google or Grok and see if that's a thing. And if you check with one, maybe check with the other two. I
Isn't
don't
it?
know. Yeah.
One thing we left out in our conversation on my channel, and I just thought of just now, everybody talks about the cost of paint. Um,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
there's, I know that, premium quality cars, you got layers and layers and layers of paint in order to give it that luster, that shine, the endurance, the durability. So I'm going to guess that there could be some savings in the paint shop as well.
I don't think it would be in those terms because Tesla paint is already famously thin. I think the savings would be perhaps in fewer choices
Mm.
and or maybe there's only one free color and it's white or it's whatever. And if you want any other the free color is fuchsia and all of the other colors might be not a $2,000 ad but a $3,000 ad. Those are possibilities I could see. And of course on your channel we talked about how range unlock might be an aftermarket purchase you could do, or speed unlock could be another, and how the wheels and tires could be another $1,000 cheaper by using 18-inch wheels instead of 19, and less performance rated tires since you no longer need them.
Right.
If we're talking about a smaller motor and just one of them, and a smaller and an interior that doesn't have the detriments of the elements coming in through the glass, do we redesign the cooling system? Is
Oh,
it shorter? Is it more efficient?
yeah, boy, you got me on that one. That would be way past my pay grade.
I think that could be a second generation thing when they know they've got enough volume to justify the R&D. They've done the hard parts, but making a new cooling loop, yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe they could. And then we're dropping some more weight. Maybe at that point you don't need as heavy duty of brakes. You get into a virtue cycle where it's quite a bit cheaper. Do you think they'll cut anything very small? Do you think they will somehow find a way to make the cup holders even less useful?
Less useful or just less. Again, I don't see. I know a tremendous amount about my little limited area of manufacturing, but when it gets into this kind of stuff, it leaves it. I'm way out of my range. But it would seem like if you want to get the cost down to at least 34.9 and preferably 29.9, but let's say 34.9 is all you can possibly do, it would seem like from what I've heard these guys talking about, you're going to be going in there and nickeling, diming it to pieces, as
Hmm.
long as you're not. Again, Elon likes to talk about value.
Mm-hmm.
He says, if you don't sell something that has a perceived value, the perceived price that is equal, then you shouldn't be in business. So you don't want to take out something that cost you a nickel if it's going to make it seem like it's $20 worth, $20 less valuable.
Sure. The example I give is Rivian loves to put the flashlight in the door, and that adds $3 of utility at a cost that's got to be between $50 and $100 in terms of the engineering, manufacturing, wire harness, and warranty. So it is. I don't know why. And then the new version comes out and it still has it. And I'm like, why? And then they show the R2 and 3 and they added another accessory in the other door. And I'm like, you're going in the wrong direction. But
Yeah. One of
I don't know.
the ones that
Maybe.
you and I talked about on my show, and I wasn't totally satisfied with our conclusion, and that is the electric seat adjusting. I think that the electric seat adjusting is probably pretty expensive. You've got motors and pulleys and wires and wiring and all kinds of things compared to no wiring at all and only some mechanics. I suspect that all of that could be a lot of money at cost.
It's an interesting discussion. I will ask the audience what they think, but here's my conclusion, and tell me what you think. If we get rid of all the things we just said, we do less expensive tires and wheels, we do a metal roof instead of the heavy and expensive glass. We put in a slightly smaller battery with a slightly smaller motor in just one of them. We don't put in the world's most rockin' sound system, but we pare it back just a little bit. The seats are now cloth, not heated, not ventilated. All of a sudden, 35,000 is believable. And even if Tesla isn't getting a 15 or 20% margin at that price, they'll make up for it with autonomy and FSD down the road.
Yeah.
Thoughts? And you think it could, with what you've seen, you think it could go even to $30,000 USD?
Well, I think you and I both agree on this one that I think it's probably going to be tough to get it down to 30. Now, what you could do is you could end up with 34,995, and you could have the promotion, which gets it down
Mm,
to 30. So you could have,
mm,
your January, when things are slow, or if there's some reason to
mm.
promote, or if you just find out, you get out there at 34,995 and you're doing well, but you decide, hey, let's test it at 30 and see what happens.
I I think all of that's interesting and possible. It remains to be seen. Of course, I was hoping for a much more exciting thing, something that was a whole new form factor. Fleets are going to want these. I don't know what it does to their math, but they do. Fleets know what their use case is. I talked with Unplugged Performance last week at the X takeover, and Ben was telling me that the fleet of 20 that they rolled out in Pasadena, they get to test them and check out how everything's going. The average mileage per day on those is 70 to 80 miles.
Hmm.
So that fleet knows what they need and how they're going to be using them. So it's effective.
Yeah.
And it improves their operating costs quite a bit. And if your upfront cost to get into the vehicle for your fleet is 20%, 30% less, it's going to make it a very different equation. So I think all that works. And of course, you shared, was it AJ's theory that these will be what bring people in, and then they get in the proper Model Y, the medium, if you will, not the L, not the S, but the medium, the extra medium. They'll say, boy, these are so much quicker. There's so much, the sound system's so much better. The cup holder isn't square. I don't know. I think I think there's a lot of value to the theory that people would choose to step up from there.
I have been teaching bicycle shops for 50 years how to sell up when they
Mm,
have a customer in the store, and it's all about the test ride. So that would, I think, also be true in a Tesla showroom. So you take what I always recommend to my bike shops is that they take the next higher level product, and they test ride with the customer. So both of them go out. The customer's on the cheap model that they think they want, and the owner is, or the salesperson is on the step up model. And then when they've driven out about 2 miles or whatever, and they turn around, then they switch.
mm-hmm,
And we find that that is extremely effective in getting
mm,
people to move up to the higher level.
mm. And if all that fails, we can always go back to passenger seat as a subscription. I think that'll
That would
be
be good. That would be
uh,
good. Yes.
that'll be good. Windshield as a subscription, I think, would bring in a lot of money and lawsuits. And I think all that's exciting. If we don't live in exciting times, what are we doing, guys? What do we miss? What do we misunderstand? Leave it in the comments below. Like, subscribe, do whatever it is you got to do. And whatever you do, stay tuned, stay juicy. And I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots in the comments on part 1 of this video over with the Randy Kirk himself.